Olum, the clever trickster, had become famous far and wide. After outsmarting Chief Akbar, tales of his sharp wit traveled across many lands. Eventually, these stories reached the ears of King Anaki, ruler of the entire kingdom. King Anaki was a proud and ambitious ruler, one who enjoyed control over everything and everyone. He did not appreciate the idea of someone like Olum, a mere villager, gaining such fame and influence through tricks and riddles. "This Olum thinks he's clever," the king said with a smirk, "but we shall see how clever he truly is." Determined to prove his superiority, the king sent a royal messenger to summon Olum to his palace for a challenge, one that would determine once and for all who was truly the smartest man in the land. Days later, Olum was busy in his village when the king's messenger arrived. "Olum, by the order of King Anaki, you are hereby summoned to the royal palace," the messenger announced. Olum raised an eyebrow, curious about what the king could want. "The king invites me to test my wits," Olum said with a grin. "It seems my reputation has reached the highest places." With that, Olum packed a small bag and began his journey to the palace, knowing full well that the king's challenge would be far from easy. After days of travel, Olum arrived at King Anaki's palace. It was the grandest building he had ever seen. Tall towers gleamed in the sunlight, and the floors were covered in silk rugs. As he entered the king's throne room, he could feel the eyes of the courtiers upon him, all wondering if this mere villager could match the king's cunning. The king sat on his throne, a sly smile on his face. "Olum," he said, his voice booming through the hall, "I have heard much about your cleverness. You have outsmarted many, but I wonder, can you outsmart a king?" "Your Majesty," Olum replied, "I do not claim to be smarter than anyone, but I do enjoy a good challenge." "What task do you have for me?" The king's eyes gleamed with mischief. The king leaned forward on his throne and said, "Your task is simple, Olum. Bring me a piece of the sky. You have 3 days to complete this task. If you fail, you will be imprisoned for life. If you succeed, I will reward you with gold, land, and half my kingdom." Olum stood still, pondering the king's challenge. A piece of the sky. It seemed impossible, and that was exactly what the king intended. But Olum was not one to be discouraged easily. "A piece of the sky, Your Majesty," Olum said, nodding slowly. "Very well, I will bring you what you ask. I shall return in 3 days." Over the next few days, Olum walked through the village, speaking with elders, children, and even scholars, listening to their stories and ideas about the sky. But no one could give him a way to physically bring a piece of the sky to the king. On the evening of the second day, Olum sat by a river, watching the sky reflect on the water. That's when it struck him. Perhaps the king's challenge isn't about taking something from the sky, Olum said to himself, but about how I can make him see the sky in a new way. With a clever plan in mind, Olum set out to gather the tools he needed: a large mirror, blue cloth, and even a feather from the highest flying bird. The villagers watched with curiosity, unsure of how these simple items could possibly help him with such an impossible task. Olum crafted a large frame for the mirror, setting it at an angle so it reflected the wide, endless sky. Then he folded the blue cloth carefully and tucked the feather inside. On the third day, Olum returned to the palace with a cart filled with strange objects. The courtiers whispered among themselves, and the king looked on with a raised eyebrow. "Olum," the king said, "have you brought me what I asked?" With a calm smile, Olum said, "Your Majesty, behold, a piece of the sky." The king looked into the mirror and saw the vast, blue sky reflected perfectly in the glass. "A clever trick, but this is not truly a piece of the sky," the king grumbled. Olum remained undeterred. Next, Olum unfolded the blue cloth. "This cloth, Your Majesty, is the color of the sky, and this feather comes from a bird who soars closer to the sky than any human can." The courtiers gasped at the ingenuity. King Anaki was furious. Olum had not truly brought a piece of the sky, but his solution was undeniably clever. The king knew he had been outwitted, but his pride kept him from admitting it easily. After a long pause, the king sighed. "Olum, you have met the challenge in a way I did not expect. Though I cannot say you have truly brought me the sky, you have used your mind to give me what I asked for. I must keep my promise." And so, the king gave Olum a reward of gold and land, though he kept half the kingdom for himself. Olum accepted the reward humbly, knowing that sometimes, the greatest victory is not in what you take, but in what you prove. As Olum left the palace, the people hailed him as the cleverest man in the land. And so, Olum continued his adventures, always ready for the next impossible challenge. As Olum walked down the path into the sunset, he left behind not just a kingdom, but a lasting lesson, that cleverness is not just in solving a task, but in how you approach the impossible. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more amazing tales on our channel.